And today is Monday, and a lot of you, I think, thought he wouldn't show up. A lot of you, I think, thought he wouldn't be a man of his word. But my friends, I'm here to say that not only is he a man of his word, he is here, top of the show. The inimitable, the incomparable, the one and only, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, on my program. How are you, sir?
Wow, I am so good. Thank you, Ariel, for having what an introduction. Thank you very, very much. And I got to tell you, I appreciate you taking a moment to take your shot, and I loved it. And I was like, you know what? You took your shot, and I reward you, brother. Let's get on the show and let's talk.
Thank you so much. This means the world to me, and it's true. I have been bothering Brad for years, and he said he would try. I don't know if he actually did, but he said he would try. And honestly, the first thing I asked him was when I got the tweet, it was like, was that really him? Did he really write that, or was it like a handler? And he confirmed that was really you. That's all you, right?
No, man, it's all me. Look, with social media, I think, social media is truly one of my, if not my most valuable asset, because it just allows me to really directly connect with audiences, consumers, fans. And by the way, so in Brad's defense, he has been talking to me for years, by the way. Ariel, would love to have you on a show. So it was always, well, let's figure out whatever the right opportunity is, and then we can do it. And just by nature of insane schedules, press tours and schedules and things like that, I just never had an opportunity not only to not do your show, but podcasts as well. And I haven't done radio shows, podcasts, or anything like this in years. So you are the first one. But I got to tell you again, it's like that old saying, you don't ask, you don't get. And I appreciate you taking that moment to ask me. And I thought, you know what? I love that opportunity. Yes.
That is amazing. Thank you so much. What an honor. And of course, the timing is great. You were just at MSG, UFC 244, BMF title. You put it around the waist of Jorge Masvidal after the fight. Just off the top, I'm curious, the experience, what was it like? And I couldn't help but wonder, as you were walking out, Dwayne, when you were walking out there, I remember 1996 when you made your debut at MSG, and here you are, you've made that walk a million times, but now it's in a different capacity for an MMA fight, a massive fight of this magnitude. Did that bring you back to those days, those early days at the Mecca?
The Mecca, Madison Square Garden, is a very, very special place for me. I started my career, as you said, in 1996 Survivor Series at Madison Square Garden. It was my very first wrestling match in the WWE. That was my very first match in the WWE. And generally, as a lot of you guys know and your fans know, wrestlers will have their very first match in the WWE in, maybe a house show, a live event or something like that. I got thrown right into the fire. And so Madison Square Garden is a very special place for me. They embraced me that night. I was just a punk kid rookie who had so much to learn and so much to earn. And that New York City crowd embraced me. So to be able to go back to Madison Square Garden in that capacity was very special for me. And, this whole thing, this idea about the BMF title and what it meant, I always felt like it was something that transcended sports. It transcended weight division because it had this incredible street credibility to it. And for me, just to be a part of it and to walk back, I'll tell you what happened when I was walking to the octagon backstage. And as you know, the cameras like to follow the fighters and their teams as they go out. And we had that really cool entrance, which I was so appreciative of. But when I was walking backstage in the Garden, walking out to the octagon, I was so precisely in the moment. And I had this rush of thought of how I've walked that backstage in those hallowed halls of Madison Square Garden so many times, held up over my head so many WWE heavyweight titles. I had the honor in front, wrestling in front of that Madison Square Garden crowd. But that night was very unique and different because when I got to the octagon, I realized that, the same flushes of thought that I went through as a wrestler, which was making sure that my timing was right in the ring, the cadence was right, making sure that all the highlights and the high spots of a match, especially if we had to go 30 minutes, 45 minutes, sometimes an Iron Man match, all that was going through my head. And what I realized is, I had such a profound, even greater profound level of respect for the fighters who not only walked those hallowed halls of Madison Square Garden, the UFC fighters, but MMA fighters who walked that walk before every fight. And this idea that, I had the luxury of knowing what the outcome will be in pro wrestling. And again, it doesn't take away from the physicality of it, and you're still getting suplexed and thrown around by 300-pound men and all these injuries that you have to deal with. But, this idea that, the fighters just, they don't have that luxury. This is why, the fighting is such a finite amount of time for these fighters. And anyway, I had a real moment and being so present in that. And that night was a very special night, and to be able to present that title to whoever the winner was, and to be part of that promoting the fight, because I did go into that fight in the BMF fight with, my number one job was to promote the fight and get as many eyes as possible on this fight. And I think because fighters have a finite window of time, and the same thing in pro wrestling, I always want to make sure that the fighters and the wrestlers are getting as much money as they possibly can, because that's the bottom line. Of course, there's passion, there's passion, there's drive, there's disciplines. But at the end of the day, I want them to secure the bag. So, the promotion that I was doing leading up to the fight, I wanted to make sure that Jorge and Nate Diaz and all the fighters, by the way, were making as much money as they possibly could on that night. And if I could help raise the bottom line and impact the bottom line in a little way, then, I've done my job.
How did you feel about the stoppage?
Well, I think like the fighters and a lot of fans, I wanted the fight to continue. I was surprised by the stoppage. But I was also, very careful not to say that I disagreed with it, because I'm not a doctor and I'm not in there, and I don't see what the doctor saw, in Nate's eyes, and how deep the cuts were and how closely connected they could have become. I'm not quite too sure, but I would have loved to see the fight continue, and also I feel confident knowing that, and feel confident saying that, because I know that Jorge, and especially Nate, considering just his mentality, would have loved to see the fight to continue too.
Did you happen to hear Nate's comments after the fight, alluding to the fact that he thought that you were rooting for Jorge? He said he loves ballers, but, he kind of threw down the gauntlet as well. I'm wondering what you thought of his comments.
He did. I wasn't surprised at Nate's comments, because that's the Nate that we all know and love. He is as advertised. And, Nate, he gets it. He knows that me and, Jorge, we're boys. We're from Miami. We have a lot of deep connections down there. A lot of the fighters we know, a lot of the coaches and trainers that we know, a lot of the gyms that we've been to down there. So, there's a connection. So, no, I was totally fine with it. He gets it. And I guess, again, I went into the fight. I wanted to be as neutral as possible when I was promoting it, because as we're leading up to it and selling it on pay-per-view, I didn't want to come out and say, Jorge's my boy and he's going to win. No, I just wanted to be neutral. And I thought that was the best, smartest strategic play, to get as many new eyes on this fight as possible. And again, help impact them in my own little way, the bottom line. And from what I'm told, it was ESPN's biggest fight since UFC's transition to ESPN. It was the biggest fight they've ever had. Second, to Conor and Khabib, which is quite an amazing accomplishment. I'm very proud for both those guys.
And, we had Jorge on the show last week, and he obviously was thrilled that you were there. He said that you were his favorite movie star, and it was such an honor to have a Miami guy there. He told us that you guys shared a moment backstage, and that you even gave him some advice about like this newfound fame. Are you comfortable sharing what you said to him?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. I congratulated him, of course. And, I talked to him about, what this opportunity meant, and how, this BMF title that is somewhat polarizing in the sport of MMA. Some guys were behind it and some fans were behind it, and some guys weren't and some fans weren't. But it was also, again, this is this unique experience that, kind of transcends, again, weight divisions and the sport, because it has such street cred. There's incredible champions who are incredibly disciplined in multiple disciplines in MMA. And then there's the BMFs. So I was very happy for Jorge. And also, there was something, I think, with Jorge, it's just, life is funny sometimes. And the world of MMA, which is why, as I said in the press conferences, there's no other sport like it, because, everyone's got a punch and shot, and within a quarter, 3-month cycle, all of a sudden there's a new star that just happens to all of a sudden start shining. And Jorge has been in the game a very, very long time. I'm from Miami, and his lore and legend of being a street fighter in Miami is very, very real from back in the day. So, I told him, I reminded him that, what an incredible opportunity this is, and to take advantage of it, continue to work hard, as of course he's going to do. And also, he's got a sharp wit about him, I think, which makes him very likable. He loves to talk shit, as we all do, down in Miami, especially because it's what we do. But he also has a cool, sharp, smart wit about him. And he's got his head in the right place. And that head, in his head being in the right place, is wanting to do everything he can to impact his own bottom line and impact the company's bottom line, which will in turn generate more income for himself and for the company and for the fighters. So he's really making sure that his value is realized. And I also told him, this with the turning of the corner, if you will, that he is, and I'm sure he's going to be Fighter of the Year in 2019. And he has an opportunity now to not only be one of the greatest of all times, but, you could kind of see this trajectory happening with Jorge Masvidal, where, he could become a very big, obviously, main event player in the game. But I also just reminded him that he also has this really cool, calm humility to him, which I think is very unique. And because a lot of fighters have that, by the way, and a lot of fighters try and find this balance of self-promoting themselves as well they should, but also have this a little bit of humility, because really that's the basis and the grounds and the foundation of MMA and mixed martial arts, is having that discipline and having a little bit of humility. And, he said that with a smile. He said, man, I always got that. And, he said, look, I'm going to need you now at every fight. You're my good luck charm. I'm going to have to find you. I said, well, you're not going to have to look hard, man. I got your back.
And of course, on Friday, you made that announcement that you'll be producing and starring in the Mark Kerr film, The Smashing Machine. Again, my favorite MMA doc of all time. And I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, I understand the search to find Mark Kerr and to get him to agree to give up his life rights and to get you on board to do this was quite the story in its own right. How did you actually find him? Because I haven't seen him in years.
Well, it took some digging to find him, and I tasked my agent, who is our friend, your friend too, Brad Slater, to find him. I called my agent probably about 4 o'clock in the morning after I rewatched the documentary, and I said, we have to track these rights down, track down Mark Kerr. First of all, see how the guy is doing. How's his health? How's he feeling? How's his relationship with his kids? I mean, again, we haven't, like you, I haven't seen the guy in years and years and years and years. And so Brad Slater went on a rampage of finding him and connecting all the dots. And, when we found some success of tracking Mark down, he was able to have a conversation with him and said, here's, Dwayne's idea and thoughts and plans. How do you feel about that? And Ariel, I got to tell you, 9 times out of 10, when I or my team present something like this to an individual, whether it's trying to track down their life rights or as it relates to a project or a movie or whatever it is, 9 times out of 10, if it's someone who hasn't been in the game for a long time or they haven't been on the radar in a long time, they are so gung-ho and they are so ready, and they're asking, what do you need from me, and how much am I going to get paid, and when is that check coming, and what's happening? And I was really moved, though not surprised, that Mark was so calm in these conversations and said, this is amazing, and I'll of course, I'm open to whatever you guys want to do. And Brad had said, how do you feel about Dwayne becoming you and playing you in this film? He said, Dwayne can play me right now. He said something that I thought was really incredible. He said, Dwayne understands who I am and he knows who I am. And Brad had said, oh, what do you mean? Did you guys meet before? And he goes, yeah, we did meet before. And we had lunch before years ago, just as two guys who admired each other's work. This is back in the late 90s when I was reaching the pinnacle of WWE at that time. And he, of course, was, one of the baddest men on the planet. He said, no, he said, Dwayne understands what it's like to perform in front of 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people. And he also knows what it's like and how intoxicating that is. And he also knows how intoxicating and how damaging it can be when you no longer have that. And then you search for another outlet and what that means and the pressures of succeeding and the mental health challenges that we go through, fighters, pro wrestlers, people in general, the pressures to succeed, and some people deal with that well, and some don't necessarily deal with it that well. And then, of course, the addiction part of it that he had as well. So, there are really so many, based on the documentary alone makes a tremendous story. Now, Mark's life after the documentary is really what the gold is, and really what the power and the anchor is of this whole thing. Because here's a guy who, as you know, and as a lot of MMA fans know, and also too, is like I told you, Ariel, this is an opportunity for us to educate a lot of the new generation of MMA fans on who Mark Kerr is, and this founding father of MMA, the specimen, the smashing machine. Because when I made the announcement there on that Friday at the press conference, I built it up so much, and that crowd was on fire. And I remember saying, and I'm very proud. I'm going to make a movie. I'm going to produce and star in it, our $7 Productions, about Mark Kerr, the smashing machine. And you could tell the hardcore fans knew exactly who he was, just like that. And they started clapping. And then there was a good amount of this new generation of fans who were like, who? Mark? And they got on their phone. They're like, oh, yeah, he's a badass. So it's a great opportunity for us to educate, and bring to light, shine the light on somebody who's very deserving. But the bottom line point of this is Mark Kerr's story after that documentary all these years is about a man who reached the highest heights of success and came down crashing incredibly hard. But like a lot of us who kind of go through this, everybody goes through this some way or another in their own way. Every day he just gets up wanting to be a little bit better today than he was yesterday. And the guy's trying, man. He's trying to be a good father, trying to be a good man, and trying to leave a good legacy. So I'm so happy to tell this story about Mark Kerr. And those are the kind of stories that I enjoy telling, because also, too, is, and you know this because you're a fan and you're in underneath MMA, and you know all these fighters. Sometimes when you look a little bit deeper than their physicality, their physical attributes, and yes, they're badasses and they're BMFs and they're champions. Sometimes when you look a little deeper, there's great humanity to a lot of these fighters who have this tremendous amount of insane pressure to perform and put it all on the line, where their life is literally at risk, every fight. So I'm very happy to tell Mark Kerr's story.
Like you, Dwayne, I pride myself on being a man of my word. We have sort of reached the end of the agreed upon time. Do you have a couple more minutes? Can I ask you a couple more questions, or do you have to run?
Look at you shooting your shot. Let's do it right now.
All right. I hope no one hates me afterwards, but hey, you only live once.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Hey, Steven Spielberg, don't worry. I'm going to be there in a second. Ariel just needs 5 more minutes. Go. Okay. That's all right. Don't worry about him.
Okay, perfect. 2 quick ones. A, when do you know when the movie is coming out? And B, the Anthony Robles film as well. Will you be playing Anthony as well?
I will not be playing Anthony. No,
okay.
So right now, I'm going to speak to Anthony. He was trying to break a world record yesterday. I'm not quite too sure if he broke it. I just got to find out of doing the world record of pull-ups, I think in a short amount of time. Anyway, the Anthony Robles story, for those who don't know, he is an incredibly accomplished, this, Ariel, he's an incredibly accomplished NCAA national champion in wrestling. And he went on to defy odds with one leg. And, when he was 3 years old, they got him a prosthetic and he refused to put it on. And he never had one since. And here's a guy, you talk about overcoming odds. He really epitomizes somebody who can overcome odds and really excel. And not only that, but, when life kind of deals you these cards that you don't ask for, and that maybe you wish you had another hand of cards, but you still play them with the best of your ability. This guy, not only has Anthony gone on to succeed and obviously become, this incredible, inspiring story, but also what an incredible personality and a warm heart and a warm soul. And he has real mana that shines through. So I'm excited to tell that story. And we're, we just made the announcement the other day. So I'm very excited about that. And as far as for the Mark Kerr story, so right now the whole goal was just to lock down the rights for his life. And I had a great conversation with Mark right before the press conference in New York City for 244. And now it's in the development phase, and we'll find the right writers. There's a lot of, as you can imagine, there were a lot of great writers who are Oscar winners, by the way, who are raising their hand to take a crack at this, and we'll find the right directors. And ideally, the goal is to be in production on the Mark Kerr story in 2021. That will be the goal.
All right. Let's end on this if we can, because this is something I'm so fascinated by. You are such an inspiration. You don't need me to tell you that. You are so positive.
Thank you,
the way you hold yourself, the way people look up to you, the way you've conducted yourself. I mean, never in a scandal or anything like that. It's just amazing what you have become. For those who have watched you from the Rocky Maivia days, it's truly amazing. And it also feels like you're one of us, right? It feels like you made it. And I think that's why so many people are so happy for you. Cut from the practice squad of the Stampeders. I mean, it's just mind-blowing. Your story is incredible. But I'm wondering, do you ever get anxious? Do you ever feel off? You're always so on, you're always so positive, you're always so down to earth, but anxiety and feeling nervous and feeling like maybe you're not going to perform, or you're not up for it, things like that. These are things that I wonder about when we talk about with fighters as well. They sometimes feel like the walls are caving in. Do you ever feel that as well? Because you do come across as superhuman. I obviously know you cry and bleed like all of us, but do you ever have those moments where you feel like you need to talk to yourself and get over that hump?
I mean, yeah, thank you for asking that question. I think that, when you're in a position like mine, and, the optics of my life is always so forward facing, and it can be at times noisy and loud just by virtue of my job and what I do. And, a lot of people, or everyone for that matter, they see the upside to it. And again, the optics of fame and the optics of fortune. And I'm not complaining, because I always say the alternative to that is to go back to the days where nobody knew who I was. Go back to the days where, as you said, I played up in the CFL for the Calgary Stampeders for just a few months before I was cut. And when I was cut from there, Wally Bono, by the way, who has just been tremendous. He is an iconic figure in the CFL. He was just a wonderful advocate for me at that time, and gave me great advice when he cut me about hang in there. And at that time, I had $7 to my name, which of course has now, become a very meaningful number to me, $7. But yeah, I always say that what helps me with the pressure, because there is pressure, there's anxiety, there's all these things that we go through, there's mental health, there's challenges. I always try and remind myself of a few things I always try and keep in the forefront of my mind. Number one is everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. When I feel walls closing in a little bit, or when I feel anxiety, or I feel like maybe I failed at something, by the way, and I've gone through a divorce, and I've gone through a multitude of things over the years that have caused, bouts with depression. But I try, and it's much easier said than done, that everything's going to be okay. Number one. Number two, you're not alone. And number three, also, I try to keep in mind that, I try and keep the hard times in the forefront of my mind. And when I'm able to keep the hard times in the forefront of my mind, then kind of the things that I think, and this happens to all of us, where, we can be fixated on something and feel like, oh man, this is the worst thing ever, or it's not good, or I'm not quite too sure. It's like when you keep the hard times in the front of your mind, especially the shit that you have already gone through, well, it kind of eases that a little bit. And also, I grew up an only child. And so I had, and I still do in ways, which is incredibly unhealthy, which is why I need therapy, to bottle things up all the time and keep it internal and try and figure the shit out on my own. Now, it's served me incredibly well over the years. However, when anxiety creeps up, or any kind of insecurity creeps up, I always make sure that I'm talking to somebody, or reaching out to my friends or family members. So I try to do things like that. But yeah, of course, it happens to me. It happens to all of us. And I think it's just a matter of, how you deal with it, and the kind of perspective that you could have. I will tell you this. I will tell you that in my 20s, where I was just flying by the seat of my pants and just, running headfirst into walls, I'm just going to make it. I'm going to make it. And then I didn't make it, and then I made it a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. As you get a little older, hopefully you get a little wiser, and you really start to, I think for me, really take advantage of the moments that I'm in and try and really be present in these moments. And I think when I'm present in these moments, like for example, in the UFC 244, in that moment, or if I have a film coming out or whatever it is with my babies, with my kids, with my wife, with friends, when I'm really present.
All right. That was a great moment right there. We connect with him real quick. Corporate Jake. Okay. Just so we can end on that thought. This is incredibly moving stuff and amazing to hear someone of his stature. Okay. Dwayne, are you there?
I am.
Sorry.
And like I was saying, and that's why I became an alcoholic.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, I don't say this lightly. The world is a better place because Dwayne Johnson is in it. It really is amazing to see the man that you have become and the inspiration that you've become. And so many people look up to you. And I just can't say this enough. It is an absolute honor to have you on this show. I have kept you for way too long, so I will let you go. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for being a man of your word. Thank you for replying to my tweet. You didn't have to. And for picking today, you didn't have to. You could have just said, my people will call your people, and you would have been out of this mess. But I really thank you so very deeply for this, and continued success. Can't wait for the film. Keep us posted on its development, and good luck with shooting and everything that you're doing. To you and your family, to your father, the legend, Rocky Johnson. Just congratulations on everything that you've become and done. It's an inspiration. It's amazing to watch.
Man, well, Ariel, listen, thank you so much for that send off. I appreciate it. Look, I always say that I'm a lucky son of a bitch to have the life that I have, and the alternative is, I go back to my days when I had $7. So, this is why these days it's easy to have a smile on my face and to work hard, man. So thank you for having me on. And also, I want to take the opportunity to thank the MMA community who have not only embraced me kind of over the years, which has been great, but especially considering, showcasing and highlighting one of their own, and Mark Kerr, and that reception at the Garden was just incredible, and I will never forget it. And I hope to make MMA, the community and the culture of MMA, very proud with this story. And I know that everybody wants to know if I have ambitions to get in the octagon. And again, the truth is, look, I know you're going to have Stipe on.
Yes.
I'm going to take him. I could take Stipe.
Oh.
I can take Stipe to lunch, because that is about. We would go, but man, thank you so much for being so kind with your words. I really appreciate it. You keep up the great work too, as well. And as always, hardest workers in the room.
Thank you, Dwayne. All the best to you and your team. We really appreciate it. There he is, the one and only Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, as you can expect. He gets a lot of phone calls. He's a very busy man, but he gave us way more time than we agreed to, and I can't thank him and his team enough for making that happen. That was amazing. Hello, everyone. It's Ariel Helwani. I just came here to thank you for watching our ESPN YouTube channel. It's the best. You know what else is the best? The ESPN app. You can get highlights, analysis, all that stuff and more. And if you want premium content and live streaming sports, there's only one place for all of that. It's ESPN Plus.